Hello and welcome to another installment of What Makes Lutherans Lutheran. Today we'll be looking at, or wrapping up actually, the final segment of family and marriages. And we'll begin a new topic, and that is what is the nature of Jesus Christ and what role does he play in Lutheranism? So with that, let's begin. Children are a blessing from God to both the mother and the father. Unfortunately, in the ancient world, and very much like it is today, children were not highly valued. And that really came to for a couple of reasons. First of all, children are expensive to maintain, and they don't really bring anything that society values. And let me point out a couple of things that where that is sort of highlighted. First of all, in the ancient Middle East, you have the Moloch and Ashtaroth cult in ancient Israel that did require child sacrifice. You also had it in Greece with the Spartans. If the child didn't meet the society's idea of perfection, the child was discarded like a piece of trash. Now, Christians look at children very differently. And in Matthew 19, we read the following. Then some children were brought to him, meaning Jesus, so that he might lay his hands on them and pray. And the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, let the children alone and do not hinder them from coming to me, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. Jesus wanted the children involved. He wanted them to come forward and to receive a blessing. We look at it today and we see that children are expendable, they're disposable, especially those children that have not been born yet. And we'll get into a little bit of that in a few minutes. Now, one of the things that children are is they're both sinful and selfish from birth. In fact, they're sinful from conception. But there's also something else that they bring. They have such a simple trust and joy that we love to see. They trust their parents implicitly, and they respond with love when they are loved. And it's sort of funny. In some ways, they're very much like a puppy. There's that unconditional love, and we adults sometimes abuse that. Now, I'm not saying that children are easy. They require a ton of time, energy, and money to raise. If you raise a child in the United States, estimates have said that it costs approximately $800,000 to raise a child from birth to their 18th birthday. And it is a commitment on the parents to have children. This isn't going to be a one and done thing. This is going to be a continual time, effort, and maintenance into that child, into rearing them up, teaching them. If you were going back, approximately 100 years ago, and maybe even 150, families had a lot of kids because the children did bring something to the equation economically. They were cheap labor. Yes, they had to, you had to raise them until about 7 or 8, but at 7 or 8, they could start taking over some of the minor chores. And as they grew, depending whether male or female, they could take on more and more responsibility to that. Now, we go back to the fourth commandment. where we honor our father and mother. And this is where Christians derive a lot of their government order from, this commandment. Uh, the government is, in essence, a mother and father, has a mother and father role in society. But in a general order, that general order suffers when parents commit adultery, there is serial divorce, there's selfish or abusive parenting, and that leaves, when you have divorce or you have the serial adultery, it leaves husband and wives fending for themselves, and the children are relegated into a secondary or even a tertiary status. Nobody really wants to deal with it. And unfortunately, in divorce, a lot of times one parent or both parents will actually weaponize the children against the other to make them feel bad, to hurt them. And really, yes, it will hurt the adult individual, but it also hurts the kids because they begin to perceive that they're there only as a wedge against the other person. Um, Part of the problem is that children are like sponges or a vacuum. They just gather in all sorts of information, and especially, this is sort of very pertinent to those that have kids, somewhere, between 3 and 7 or 8, and the kids will pop out with something, and you're going like, where did they hear that, or how did they do it? And if you really think back about it, you might have said something, your spouse might have said something, and the child now has internalized that. Well, part of that is they're internalizing your behavior towards your spouse and how a family operates. And that is, in a functioning family, that's a great thing. Children learn how to love one another. Even though they are sinful and selfish, they learn to share. They learn that there is forgiveness, and they learn how to forgive. Um, they learn that mom and dad are there and can be trusted. And even though the child doesn't agree with the course of action the parent is taking, it, for the most part, is there for the child's benefit. My wife and I, when we were raising our kids, we always would tell them, okay, you're going out, I want to know who you're going out with, where you're going, and what time you'll return. And our kids grew up with that. And our niece came to live with us, and she came from a very unstructured environment. My wife's sister, there was basically no rules in the house. And, she had a very difficult time. But after, I think it was a year or so, she began to understand that we weren't trying to run her life. We weren't trying to manipulate her. But what we were trying to do is to understand who she was with and what they, where they were going and what they'd be up to. And it was for her protection. One of the things, as our kids got older, with the easy availability of drugs and alcohol and that sort of thing, we knew there'd be a temptation. We told our kids basically, if we find drugs in the house, we will turn you over to the authorities. Alcohol, we said, okay, we know you're going to do this. It's illegal. If you or your date is too intoxicated to drive safely, in fact, we even said, if they're too intoxicated, forget it, call us. There'll be no retribution that night. We will come get you and we'll bring you home. And surprisingly, I never thought my kids would need to take me up on that. Both of them did, one time only. And both times we were glad they did because their dates were quite intoxicated, and it would have been a danger to themselves, to our kids, and anybody else who might have been in a car. So kids love those. They love those boundaries. It gives them a sense of safety. It gives them a sense of, I know where the borders are. Yes, they're going to push the borders. Yeah, they're going to see how far I can go. But they're also, to them, although they may not realize it until much later, that there is a sense of security knowing how far I can go before, I have gone too far. And we have the same thing in society. They're called laws. One of the things is, we know that people in Southern California, especially on the freeways, especially in the low traffic times now during the pandemic, people tend to push the boundaries of the speed limit. And how far do you push it? We know the speed laws are there for our safety, but we, like children, like to see where we can go. Now, one of the things that defines Lutherans from other Christians and from other religions is that we take a look at and we take very seriously the role of God the Son being Jesus the Christ, the Messiah. Muslims look at Jesus as a great prophet. He is a prophet that will return. Muhammad will not return. Jesus will. Now, in the Quran, it says the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the four Christian Gospels, are of equal weight to anything written in the Quran. There is a problem with that. And if you take a look at John 1:1, you will see that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And I have a video that I'd like to show you in just a minute. So the Muslims trip up on that. Now they will tell you that all those fragments of John 1:1 are all misinterpreted. But to date, we have no evidence that when we find a new text or a new fragment of that text, they all say the same thing. So we as Lutherans reject that. The Jews believe that Jesus was a great yet unorthodox rabbi. And he certainly was great. He was certainly unorthodox. And he was a rabbi's rabbi because he knew the law backwards and forwards, inside and out, because he was a part of giving those 10 words to the ancient Hebrews. But where the Jews have a stumbling block is that they don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah. They're still waiting for him. Buddhists believe that Jesus was a very enlightened person. And scholars will take a look and tell you that Jesus was known and renowned for his remarkable ethics. Jehovah's Witnesses say that he is a divine being, but he is not God. And our cartoon in just a minute will show you that. Mormons teach that Jesus became a God, not equal to God the Father. And this comes from their teaching that, everyone gets their own planet and becomes a god, and um, you know, so on and so forth. Now, Christians, and I'm using Christendom, in a very broad brush here, believe that Jesus is God. He became man for the salvation of those who believe in him. He is the second person of the Trinity. He is of one substance with the Father, whom our Orthodox brothers would agree with. But when we say that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son, as we do in the Nicene Creed, they say, no, that's not the case, because that wasn't in the original Nicene Creed. And if you remember back from our early studies, we took a look at how people looked at the creeds, and you can go back and refer to that. So I'd like to take a minute and go over this, this view of John 1:1. It is a short cartoon put together by a Lutheran pastor. I believe he is located in Western Illinois. His theology is bulletproof, and he has a little bit of fun with it as well. Pastor Hans Feeney, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, did a great job, and I really encourage you to go out and look at YouTube and look at Lutheran satire, because he handles a lot of these things with a good bit of humor. So with that, we will start our video.